So here we are in February of 1941 over in Afrika. The Italians definitely have a serious supply problem. They ate all their supply at the front line, lost a couple of units due to the attrition, and have very little prospect of getting enough to support their entire force. And they're moving units. Some of the units died, who are trying to get to the back lines and get out of danger here. These guys up in Bardia. We're probably going to see more and more losses. This becomes key, though, trying to maintain this line here. More important, I think, than the units I'm losing to starvation or attrition of various sorts. The Allies are seeing the possibility, or the Brits are, of seeing the possibility of the Italians just collapsing as they did historically. So they're massing their forces and moving supplies up into El Alamein with the intention of the kind of historical attack that they made, which really swept across all of Cyrenaica and was only stopped over here around Mursa Braga and Alagila. We did see, though, some Allied withdrawals. Some of the new troops came in, were immediately sent off to another theater. It was decided, they're only Italians. They're not going to break through. Very different from the historical feel. Kind of feels funny. I feel like in Burma, there should be some effect as to how bad you're doing. On the other hand, players could game that very easily, and players playing something this light might be more tempted to do so than people playing the OCS would. Here in February of 41, Rommel didn't make it onto the board. He's actually under that turn marker. There's a rule where he gets recalled on a 4 or less on 2 dice every turn, and this was his first turn to be on the board, but he didn't make it. So this is where the interesting stuff happened. The line down at around Mursa Matrua was unsustainable. So the Italians pulled back, and I think they lost a couple more units. No, 1 more unit due to supply. It was actually further back. They were able to get everything that was in the front up here to try to defend, what is this, City Barney, and the Bardia line. And the Brits followed. The Brits have a lot less trouble with supply. They're close to their supply base. Once they get down around here, they're going to have trouble. But they don't have to be down there. Unlike, see, in Desert Fox, we start with the Brits already marching on their way towards Tripoli and getting stopped. In this, because the Italian collapse is part of the game and didn't happen, you end up with there being no reason for the Brits to march all the way over there. Kind of a shame, because certainly that extending down towards Alagila is definitely a foolish thing to do if you know the Germans are coming. So I think actually the starting point for the Desert Fox may be better. Now, that's an option in this. You can start with Rommel's arrival, which is probably a very similar scenario. It's kind of neat to be able to play this out, this part of it. And we got to see the Italians get attacked a couple of times and driven back. 2 of their stacks got hit, and they lost at least the artillery back here from that. It's not trivial to wipe them out. Supply is a much easier way to do it, but I wanted to keep the air point. The air points weren't being very successful. I've only got 1 per turn for the Brits, and that wasn't really helping it didn't work once to prevent the ports from being used. So using it in a battle seemed more effective. And I got some good results off the battle. There are a lot of Italian troops there. And like I was saying, I'm not really sure that's a big advantage for the Axis. I want to get those troops off the board, and then they're going to be eating supply over in Tripoli. They gained me some ground, there's no question of that, but it's hard to get the better troops, the Germans and the better Italians, around the hump without this. And I made the probably mistake of using the Trento division as a motorized division. Given how badly I need trucks to move stuff, I probably should have just taken it as a foot division and not deployed it. I may reconsider that. Alright. Here we are in April in the desert, and the Italians keep falling back, this time to Bardia. The Allied attacks, there were a couple of overruns, and they slammed into the town itself. The Italians chose not to withdraw from Bardia. It's fortified, it's a minor city. It's too valuable to give up cheap, so they're going to try to stand there. On the same note, we're seeing the German forces, still no Rommel, he's off the board again, moving around Cyrenaica to move up, but we're pretty much out of supply again back here on the Tobruk area. That's completely gone. The supplies I've been channeling through here are gone. Benghazi's got a couple, which we can move forward. I'm also moving forces from Tripoli with limited amounts of supply, but definitely keeping this big army intact is tough. On the other hand, the British are killing off Italian units, which should make it easier, I guess. I'm not sure. It certainly is not as unpleasant a situation as the Italians initially faced. But on the other hand, I'm not sure that the Germans can really afford to get all their units up there, as long as those Italian units are in the way. So this may end up being less of the mobile war that Rommel envisioned and executed, because I've got all those damn Italian units. Here we are in May, and Rommel finally made it to the battle. Unfortunately, he charged ahead to engage some of the British units that were sieging Bardia, and got himself cut off. He's surrounded, got attacked. His units aren't that great on defense, and some not so great things happened. On the other hand, allowed the Axis to take some losses, which will cut their supply costs down, right? And there will be a counterattack, of course. The retreat would have cost at least as much as standing did. So we're going to probably start seeing a really strange little battle there. We'll see how it shakes out. Here we are in June, and the fighting's really getting tangled up over near the Bardia area. Axis is keeping themselves barely in supply every turn, and actually beginning to build up some almost reserves. I don't know. A bad turn comes and they'll be wiped out, so, in terms of the reserves. Of course, it's not as important now because the Italians are gone. Rommel pulled himself out of that trap, and a whole bunch of Italians and Germans, a few Germans, came in to help him. And then we see the British kind of trying to flank around to the south, and they crushed this little stack. It's a tough game because of the fluid zones of control, in the sense that you can attack what you like, so you can get really, really good odds on something. So in that sense, it's really hard to convince yourself, I'll make 2 4-to-1 attacks instead of a 9-to-1 attack. At least for me. I don't know if everybody's under that same impression, but I did pick out the weakest location. The only other that was motorized. The only other option was attacking really these Italian infantry, and they're of questionable value anyway. So wiping them out for the Germans may make it easier to bring some of these guys on the board who've been kind of delaying near Tripoli. We lost one of the pillboxes or whatever up here around El Alamein. Had to withdraw a unit, left it empty. Mersa Matruh is empty. Basically, it almost looks like somebody could stab through, and they probably could by sneaking through these zones, because again, they're semi-fluid. They cost a couple extra movement points, and that's it. But you end up out of supply if you're over there, so it's not really of great value. Well, we're halfway through June, and what started out as a very promising looking turn for the Axis. Rommel conducted some overruns, really degraded the British position. He then maybe overstepped and tried a little too far. He went for some normal attacks, those went fine. Then he went for a number of exploitation attacks against this British stack back here. Now the British are not entirely surrounded, but close to. But they're going to be able to fight their way out of it because of the way the movement rules are. Who's not able to fight their way out of it is this stack that's completely unsupplied down here, next to Rommel. And these guys over here suffered some damage in the Italian armor, the good units, in trying to extricate those guys. Rommel made an attack which wasn't bad, but it wasn't sufficient. The British chose to stand and take extra losses. One of the things that helped spur this on was the British suffered, they can only get this twice in a game, a withdrawal of 3 infantry brigades and an armored brigade. So there are a lot of missing units, including some good ones now. So Rommel was thinking, geez, this is the time to try to break him. He's further west than you'd want to be, with less troops than he'd want, and maybe not quite the units in the back that he desired. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that well. I don't think the British can smash the Germans for this, but we'll look. We'll see in the next turn, in the next half of the turn. But I do think that definitely weakened the advantage that the Germans had gotten off of the luck of the die. Well, that turned out a little anticlimactic. The German units were mainly destroyed, no question, but they got off fairly light. Other than that one out of supply stack, they got 1 unit out of it left. The British were more intent on maintaining their own supply and not getting their stacks destroyed, so they largely just pulled back into a position where they could attack that unit. Very, very fluid game. Very easy to slip by your opponent unless he builds a wall, and even if he does, you can still overrun him, which is kind of cute. Okay. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Close to halfway through, actually. And things have kind of stayed in a tangle right at the border.